Tim, hi, this is David Olkowetsky with Artisan Revere. First of all, I want to say thank you very much. My team and I really appreciate your support. In this video, I'm going to go over two different things. So first of all, I'm going to tell you about our 8.5 steps to maintaining this knife forever. That's number one. And then number two, I'm going to perform a quality control inspection. Before I get into the tips and the QC inspection, I just want to show you, this is your knife, your cobalt blue 8.6 inch Artisan Revere Elmex steel chef knife. I'm going to do our little fun test to start. So this is your knife here. This is the knife that I'm shipping to you, of course. So there you go. It cuts magazine paper like nobody's business. That's one of the toughest tests of an edge's sharpness. We'll perform a handful of other tests as well. But before I do, let me just tell you some quick knife care tips, and then we'll do a full QC inspection, and then I'll clean up your knife and ship it out to you. So first things first, your knife is meant for food and only food. Don't use a thin blade, thin edge like this to break down poultry or other livestock. It can be used for chickens, for ducks, etc. It's just not optimal for that sort of, for something that's very dense and hard like a bone. I'd be using a thicker, softer blade, something from Wusthof or something like Henkel's, something that you don't want to potentially chip. This is made from Elmex steel. Elmex is incredibly tough, but nevertheless, it's better to prevent something than have to fix it. Also, I should also just mention, don't use it on anything that's frozen, because frozen foods are obviously incredibly tough and dense. So that's number one, food and only food, ideally non-frozen foods. Number two, wash and dry your knife completely after use. Don't let it sit in the dishwasher or in the sink, or obviously definitely not the dishwasher, but not in the sink for 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, whatever it is. Look, we've had a couple customers, actually I think exactly 2 customers out of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of knives come back to us showing a little bit of patination, a little bit of a patina on their blades, asking us what we can do about it. And so first we need to ask what happened, and the thing that always happens is, they'll wind up carving through pot roast or something along those lines, and then just leaving it in the juices. And so the thing to note is obviously very important. The thing to note is, lots of meats and so on have sodium in them, especially if you're cooking them with some like a soy sauce or something like that. So just remember, after you're done cooking, within 30 minutes or so, wash it by hand, use warm water, a soap. Be careful with the sponge. So another test for a knife sharpness is, will it cut through a sponge? The answer is yes, it will absolutely cut through a sponge. So just be a little bit careful as you're using it. Remember to use a non-abrasive sponge. So when you go to the grocery store, just confirm that it says non-scratch on the sponges, okay? So that's number two, wash and dry completely immediately, or ideally immediately after use. Number three, food grade mineral oil. This is great. It's good to put it on the blade. It's good to put it on the handle. It's a rust preventer, but it also keeps moisture in the handle and keeps moisture away from the blade so long as it's already dry. Number three, cutting boards. There are 2 primary types of cutting boards you should use, and one secondary board, which, if you're an expert, is good as well. The first are wooden cutting boards. So wood is great for everything except for animal proteins. I would avoid cutting any sort of animal proteins on a wooden board. For wood, walnut's good, cherry's good, maple's good. Bamboo is not wood, don't use it, it has very high silica content. Teak is not so great either. Really just stick to those 3, maple, walnut, cherry, and you'll be great. Plastic cutting boards are awesome as well. They're good for anything. I use plastic for animal proteins. And the third kind of board is synthetic rubber. Those are fantastic, but they're really only for people who slice. They're not for rock choppers. So this knife here, it has a bit of belly, so you're probably going to wind up doing more rock chopping. So we prefer, with this knife, not to use a synthetic rubber board. So that's number 4, cutting boards. Number 5, bench scraper. I don't know where my bench scraper is, but the idea is this. Actually, let me see, where's my bench scraper? One second, sorry. You know what? I'm not sure what my bench scraper is, but it doesn't matter. The point of the bench scraper is a lot of cooks, even professional cooks, will be cutting and then they'll scrape with the cutting edge of the blade. Don't do that. Remember to flip the blade and use the spine of the blade or use a bench scraper. The reason is the edge is very thin. You don't want to cause any unnecessary damage, especially lateral damage. It's a pain in the butt to fix. Never throw your knife in the dishwasher, ever. I'll give you the reasons, but just suffice to say, never put a high-end knife in the dishwasher. Number one, it's going to potentially damage the edge if the edge hits up against something that's harder than the edge. So this is it's a thin edge, obviously. So if it's hitting up against ceramic or it's hitting up against glass, you're going to potentially cause edge damage. So that's number one. Number two is the handle. So you're going to it's going to be really, really bad for the handle. Our handles are held together by brass pins and epoxy. Epoxy melts under, it'll literally seep out completely under moisture and heat. Those are the two worst things for epoxy. And then you're also going to pull out all of the moisture from the handle. So you really would just want to avoid the dishwasher at all costs. Magnetic storage or the leather sheath is how I would store this knife. So if you purchase a magnet, let's say my hand is the magnet, this is a prototype blade made out of plywood, so no risk to me here. You're going to put the blade spine first onto the magnet, sort of gently like this, and then rotate it onto the magnet. And when you're going to take it off, you just rotate it off and pull it off this way. You never want to have edge contact with anything other than your food and your cutting board. The other great way to store your knives is in leather sheaths. Yours comes in a leather sheath. This is how I personally store all of my knives, regardless of whether they're stainless or even non-stainless. And the reason I'm comfortable doing that is, it is true, moisture retains leather, absolutely true. But as long as you dry your knife completely, you can store it there. I would suggest, if you're going away for a month or 2 months, apply 1 drop of mineral oil to both sides of the blade and rub it in with a terry cloth or some sort of towel. And that'll just prevent any possibility of rust forming or any sort of corrosion or patination. Elmax is a stainless powder steel. You have to try to corrode it. It is possible to create a minor patina again if you leave it in foods, but I've actually never been able to corrode the blade, even though I've tried. And we've also sent our knives off to the Culinary and Allied Trade Research Association in the UK, and we pass all of the sodium chloride tests and we pass the acid tests as well. So you shouldn't have any issues. We don't like knife blocks, so that's those big, blocks where you put 5 or 7 knives and it's in wood, because what happens every time you put it in, you are literally, you're basically just, you're grinding the edge along essentially a piece of wood. Also, they're very often, there can be mold in there, all that kind of stuff. Just best not to keep it in there. Okay, important, daily maintenance, honing, very, very important. A lot of cooking schools teach this incorrectly, so we even get feedback from some professional chefs who were thankful to us for showing them an improved technique. A lot of cooking schools show this method right here. So I'm using a ceramic honing rod. You always want to use ceramic. They're harder, they're smoother. We don't like that method. We've seen some professional cooks move like this. Again, we don't like this method. Both of these are faulty because you can't maintain a super consistent angle. That's very, very important. This method is better than this method because you're pulling away and you're not going into the hone. You're pulling away from the hone, so you're not going to cause as much edge damage potentially. That's number one. And then number two, with this technique, you're also slicing off the honing rod occasionally, and if there's somebody walking in front of you, that can be a little bit dangerous. We've also seen people, especially a lot of butchers, move in like this. I don't like this technique. Again, you're chopping into the honing rod, number one. Number two, it's hard to maintain a consistent angle. Number three, good chance you're going to hit up against the guard right here. So what's the right way? Placing the honing rod into the cutting board, putting the heel, that's the back of the blade, up against it gently and moving down at a consistent angle with very light pressure, like that, 3-4 times before or after service, or if you're a home cook, before or after you're cooking. If you're cooking at home, I would do it once a week, once every 2 weeks. You don't need to do it every day. If you're a professional cook, obviously daily is fine. So that's honing. And then tip number 8.5 is when your knife can no longer easily pierce through a tomato skin or a pepper, we recommend sharpening it either on whetstones or some sort of power grinder. We like the Work Sharp. They're, in my view, the best on the market. It's actually the way we don't actually use Work Sharps to sharpen our knives at our facility, but we use a similar grinding system there with professionalized belt grinders. So the exact same quality abrasives. They're Norton abrasives. They're genuine Norton abrasives. They're very, very good. I don't remember if Australia is 110V or 220V, but you could probably get something similar there as well. That's it. If you need some tutorials on sharpening on whetstones, reach out, let me know, I'm happy to help. Now I'm going to perform a QC inspection on your blade, so let's do that. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take out your knife, I'm going to feel the handle, make sure that the pins are flush, they are. I'm going to check that there's no gaps between the scales and the tang, and there aren't any. I'm going to do that visually. I'm also going to feel it physically to get that tactile response. It's perfect. And the handle is perfectly smooth. There are no hot spots. I'm going to re-oil this and clean it up afterwards, like I mentioned earlier. Next thing I like to do is I like to put the tip into the board and make sure there's just a little bit of flex. You can probably see it in the video. Yep, perfect flex. We round the spine of every blade. And the choil, this is the choil of every blade, and that's to ensure that you don't get a callus on your index and middle finger. Middle finger choil, index finger up here if you're using a pinch grip. Perfect. We're going to check the balance. We like it to balance just in front of the handle. As you can see here, it does, no problem. The reason for that is you want to have a good balance between power and dexterity. More weight in the blade means more power. Think of a cleaver, you chop through things. More weight in the handle means more dexterity. You have better maneuverability. We find that the right place to balance our knives is just in front of the handle. I'm going to do a quick chip test. So I'm going to check up against my fingernail. That's great. I'm going to move it through a piece of wood under its own weight. That's just, we obviously deburr all of our knives, but I like to do it anyways, just as a minor OCD that I have. I'm going to do an edge flex test. We want basically no edge flex. So I'm checking to see if the light will change just a tad, and it does. Again, we like very little edge flex. I don't recommend doing this yourself. You can very easily slip and cut yourself badly, so please don't do that. And then I've already done the magazine test, and I'm going to just do a quick grind check. Okay, now I'm going to check for straightness. This blade is perfect. This is a really high quality piece of craftsmanship. I'm very excited to get it out to you. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Like I said, I'm going to clean it up and I'm going to ship it out to you today. Thank you so much and have a great day. By the way, we've got paring knives available on our site as well. Once you get this one, you'll love it. You'll probably want to order a paring knife. Just let me know, and we're doing a pre-sale right now for the paring knives. I'm happy to honor that discount on the paring knives as well. Thanks so much.